Good morning and welcome to Mix Matters on 101.9 The Mix. I'm Susan Winsek. Get out the label maker. On today's show, we're getting organized. A professional organizer goes over everything from keeping a family calendar and cutting the paper trail to cleaning closets and corralling those collectibles. Welcome to our show. It's a new year and a new chance for all of us to get our act together and get organized. January is Get Organized Month, as declared by the National Association of Professional Organizers, NAPO. We've got an expert joining us on the show today. Amy Traeger is president of the Chicago chapter of NAPO. Welcome to our show, Amy.
Thank you.
How long have you been a professional organizer?
Well, in April, it'll be 9 years that I've been organizing.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. It's been a good time, though.
Have you always been interested in organizing? Are your drawers always neat and clean?
They were. As a child, I asked my mom to clean out the junk drawer in the kitchen and things like that. So I've always been a pretty organized person, and it sort of fit in naturally with going into this profession.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about NAPO. What is the organization like?
Sure. Well, it's a professional association for organizers and organizing-related companies. So we also work with closet installers and interior designers and things like that. But we're a professional association that provides education and networking opportunities for our members.
And how many members do you have?
Right now in Chicagoland, our chapter has about 100 members.
And do you get together for regular meetings, too?
We do. We have a monthly meeting in the suburbs. It's in Elk Grove Village. We meet once a month, and we have about an hour long of announcements and information sharing and that sort of thing. And then we have an hour-long educational program.
A little later in our show, I want to get your advice on hiring a professional organizer.
Sure.
And how we go about doing that. But again, I want to remind folks, our guest is Amy Traeger. She's president of the Chicago chapter of the National Association of Professional Organizers, better known as NAPO. So it's a new year, a chance for all of us to get a fresh start. And for many of us, the first thing we want to do is run out and buy bins and organizers and file folders and things like that.
Yes, that is a lot of people's first reaction, and I usually suggest that that should actually be the last step in the organizing process, especially if organizing has been a challenge you've been working on for a while. Chances are you have the things you need already somewhere in your home or office. Usually those just need to get repurposed and switched to a new closet or a different room in the house where they'll be a little more efficient and make some more sense. So chances are, if you need to buy something, you won't know until the end when you've already weeded out the things you'd like to get rid of.
For some of us, our houses may still be a little topsy-turvy from the holidays, be it company, be it the decorations, or whatever. So
Sure.
Where do we get started?
Well, I would say the first thing to start is with decorations. If you've decorated this year and they're still out and you'd like to get them put away before next Christmas, I suggest starting by packing up the ones that you've put out and still like and still enjoy. Pack those up, label the bins or boxes for the appropriate holiday. And you'll know that those are the ones that you used most recently. Those are the ones that are most likely to get used next holiday season. If there are any other decorations that are still in the boxes or didn't quite make it out this year, chances are you either don't have the space for them to put out or you don't really like them. So those should either be donated, and now is a perfect time to do that. Why bother packing them back up and putting them back in the attic or basement? Or feel free to cull out the things that are memories. A lot of people who have young kids have homemade ornaments from school or pictures that the kids made. And those are things you want to keep, but maybe you're not necessarily going to put out on display anymore. So those might get repackaged or reboxed up into a memory bin or a memory box as opposed to with the holiday decorations so they don't get lost in the shuffle.
Are you big on labeling things?
Absolutely. Definitely. Label anything and everything, in my opinion. So those boxes and bins should get labeled, and that could be something as simple as writing on the box with a marker. It could be a fancy label from a label maker, something you type up on your computer, really whatever works. And that goes the same for files, for cabinets and drawers, for baskets around the house, especially if there's more than one person using that space. The more labels, the more user-friendly the space becomes.
So we've organized our Christmas decorations, the holiday decorations, and put those away and purged those. what should we do next? I've read that this might be a good opportunity to organize your address book.
Absolutely. The new year for a lot of people is a fresh start, and you want to get organized right away so that the rest of the year is a breeze, which is great. So starting off with something small and manageable like an address book is something that will help you throughout the year, and something that should be manageable to do in a day. So you sit down with your address book, whether that's still paper or electronic, go through it, make sure you still remember who those people are. If you don't know who somebody is, chances are you're probably not going to call or email or write to them. And add in anybody whose name or number is sitting around on a Post-it note or on a little piece of paper or a napkin. Add those into the paper or electronic address book so that everything's all in one spot and you're not left searching around for those little scraps of paper and things like that.
Do you have a preference? Should we push ourselves toward electronic address books as opposed to the old-fashioned paper book?
It really has to be whatever's easiest for you. A lot of people are comfortable with the electronic address books. There's a lot of different types as well as styles, and some are a little more detailed, some are pretty basic. Those work great for some people. If technology is still a little foreign to you, or you just are comfortable with the paper style, keep with that. If that's what works for you, keep it. The most important thing is that all of that information is in one spot. So whether that's one electronic address book or one paper address book, that's the important thing, to not have 2 or 3 of them floating around the house or one in your purse or wherever it might end up. It's the same idea as a calendar. It doesn't matter really if it's paper or electronic. It just matters that you've got one calendar with all of your information on it so that you don't miss appointments or people's information when it comes to an address book.
Well, that's a natural progression then to calendars.
Sure.
New year, people cracking open new calendars or moving to the next month on their iPhones or their Blackberries.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, it's important to just have all of your information in one spot. So if that's a paper calendar, whether it's one that you can throw in a bag and take with you, or if it's a wall calendar, make sure that all of your appointments are on there, whether it's yours or family members that you need to keep track of. Using different colored ink on paper calendars might be helpful. Red for one person, black for another, blue for another, something like that. And if there are appointments or events that you feel might get canceled or the time might get changed, perhaps mark those down in pencil so that you can easily erase them and move them around on the calendar without having big scratch marks everywhere. And then if you have an electronic calendar, there are calendars like Outlook or Google calendars, things like that can be included with your computer system or your phone system or are free altogether. And those are really easy to color code events by person or type. You can put in reminders and alarm clocks and all kinds of bells and whistles if you want to. So those, if you're comfortable with the technology, can be really user-friendly as well.
Are the electronic ones easy for the whole family to use?
It depends on the type. If you have a syncing calendar where you can have one calendar that's viewable and editable from the home computer, from a laptop, from an Android or an iPhone, those are really great. You can share those calendars with whomever you like. So it could be a family member that lives with you. It could be a family member across the country. You can share the calendar with them, and you can also choose what types of events they are able to edit. So, for example, you can share the calendar with your spouse and give them the ability to add events or delete events. But you can also share that calendar with your children, but not give them access to add or delete. So if you have that type, and I know Google Calendar is one of those, that becomes really great for a busy and active family.
Have you found that your clients have good success with the Google Calendar?
Yeah, they really can. And again, it has to be something that everybody's comfortable with. So if one person in the family is stuck on the paper calendar and everybody else is trying to use the electronic one, it may not be as successful. So make sure you kind of take a poll of who will be using it and what they're expecting and what they're used to.
I think that's kind of a good theme throughout all of our conversation here is that you really have to have your whole family on board with a lot of this.
Definitely.
Otherwise, it ends up being mom who's the one who's always cleaning up and organizing and picking up after everyone.
For sure. For
and then
sure.
You're back to square one.
Yeah, and that just becomes tiring and frustrating. So the most important thing, if you're going to tackle a space in your home or office on your own without your family there or helping, is when you're done to give them a tour of that space. So show them everything you worked on, where they can find everything in that space, whether it's clothes or toys or paperwork, and express to them the expectation then that this is how I've organized it. Everything's labeled appropriately, so you should be able to find what you need here. And I expect when you're done using those things that they will then make it back to their home where I've placed them and ask if they have any questions or any requests. If something's out of reach or inconvenient or something like that, then you can adjust so that it works for everybody if they're not available to help you right off the bat.
We're talking with Amy Traeger. She's president of the Chicago chapter of NAPO, the National Association of Professional Organizers. January is Get Organized Month, so we're doing what we can to help you get organized. We've got our new calendars. It's a new year. You want a fresh start. Clean your desk up, clean those closets, get to it. Plus, winter in Chicago can be kind of long. And
Yeah.
looking at messy closets or messy kitchen counters gets annoying.
Sure, yeah, especially if you're stuck inside, if it's too cold or snowy to go out. It can be kind of a drag if you're looking around at a bunch of piles of things and stuff that you're not quite sure what's there anymore. And if you are stuck inside, it's a perfect time to work on all of that. So if you're there, you might as well work on it, make some sense of your space, and feel a little more calm and relaxed while you're stuck on the couch all winter.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel, though, anyway, that once my house is completely organized, that my life will fall into place and get organized as well.
It certainly helps. It certainly helps. There's a lot of proof out there that the more organized your space is, whether that's your files at work or your kitchen cabinets, that the more time you have to spend on the things you'd like to do. So, for example, people who are making the New Year's resolution to lose weight or be healthier, the more organized your kitchen is to prepare healthy, quick meals, the more likely you are to follow up with that. The more organized your perhaps family room space is, the more likely you are to be able to do some exercises in there. So there's really sort of a waterfall effect that once a space gets organized, then the next space gets organized, and then your calendar gets organized and your time does, and you really can maximize the time that you have available to achieve the things you want to.
Think about all the money you might save, because you didn't realize that you already bought envelopes or whatever it is, and you have, several boxes that you haven't touched, but you couldn't find them.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Things like
there's
that.
a lot of duplication can be foregone if you find those things while you're organizing that, I didn't realize I had 15 black t-shirts. Who would have thought? And if you are organizing paperwork and bills and things like that, if you have a hard time paying things on time and not paying interest rates and things like that, then getting your filing system and paperwork organized can really help with that and save you quite a bit of money over time.
Yeah, let's talk about the paper trail. I think we're all looking to cut the paper trail, and now with the new year, pretty soon we're going to be filing our income taxes, so it would be a good time to have an eye toward that as we're organizing all of our paper stuff. What are some tips you have for us when it comes to that?
Sure. Yeah, it is a great time to start thinking about taxes. As the new year starts, most people will just start adding paperwork to the files that they already have made. And the easier thing to do is to pull out anything that's left from 2011 and bundle that all into one spot. That might be an accordion file, it might be a bag, depends on how much paperwork you have, and label that for 2011. Know that that is the past year so that the files that you access regularly are only the current year. That way, when March or April hits and you're working on your taxes, you don't have to sift through everything and pull out year by year. So once everything's in 2011, then if you're doing your own taxes or working with an accountant, you can just sit down with that one file or bag full of paperwork and find what you need for taxes and shred or recycle the rest.
So now's a good time to start our new file system, perhaps.
Definitely, yeah.
And what are some tips for starting a new file system?
Well, think about what you access regularly, whether that's weekly or monthly. So most likely there are some bills to pay, whether that's credit card or utilities. There's probably some bank statements that are coming in, perhaps things like tuition or school-related or work-related, like paychecks. And then find out what you can do electronically, if you're comfortable with that. So are you getting your utility bills online, or are they getting deducted automatically out of your checking account each month? Doing things like that really reduces the amount of paper coming into the house through the mail. It's also a good time to take your name off of mailing lists if you find you're getting lots of catalogs that you have no idea how they got to your house and you're not interested in what they're selling. And that can be done online as well. It's just a simple form to fill out, and it goes to all the catalog companies. And once you've sort of culled through what you can do electronically and get out of the way, then what's left for paperwork, you want to make up files that make sense for whoever's doing the filing. So you want to label things that make sense to you, and if that's, fabulous finds or interesting articles, titles like that, if they make sense for you, are great file names. And it can also be something as straightforward as gas bill, electric bill, Visa card, things like that. So really whatever makes sense, and then just be sure to keep up with the system. That's really the hardest part. Setting up a system doesn't take a whole lot of time. It's the upkeep that's the most work.
And where do people drop the ball?
Usually it's people get a little bit behind and then a little bit more behind, and the busier your schedule is, the more likely you are to set filing aside, because nobody really likes to file. It's not that exciting. So I usually suggest, if you know you're not going to have the time to do it on a daily or weekly basis, which most people don't, is to give yourself a physical limit of how much paper can set aside for filing. So that might be a file folder, that might be a paper tray, it might be a magazine holder near where the paper comes into the house or on the desk that you're doing the filing at. And once that file or paper tray is full, then it's time to file everything away. So that might be once a month or once every couple of months, depending on how much paper's coming in, if you know it's just not realistic to ask yourself to do it on a weekly basis.
Our guest is Amy Traeger. She's president of the Chicago chapter of NAPO, the National Association of Professional Organizers. We're getting our act together today. Amy's giving us tips on getting organized. Let's talk about closets, Amy.
Sure.
What are some of the first things we need to do when we want to organize our closets?
Well, the first thing I do when I work with clients is we empty the closet out, believe it or not. So that gives us a fresh view of an empty closet, and we can take a look at the layout and the setup. Some people have closets where you can move shelves or hanging rods, and sometimes doing something as simple as that really will change the space and maximize what you can do in there. And now other people have one shelf and one hanging rod, and that's all you've got, and you work with it. So once it's emptied out, we might, sweep out the floor, wipe down a shelf just so it's a clean slate. Then from there, we're going to sort out everything that was in that closet. So it might be pants, shirts, dresses, belts, accessories, things like that. And we might be finding other things like photo albums or board games or videotapes that have sort of been thrown in there and made their way over time. So we want to pull out anything that doesn't belong there anymore and has a place in a different room, and then see what we're left with. So we've got those different categories, and they've been sorted out. And from there, we can look at one category at a time and decide what's in that pile that I would like to keep. So, for example, if we're doing a clothes closet, we've sorted into categories of shirts, pants, skirts, dresses, things like that. And then we take each of those piles at a time. So we would take the shirt pile and decide which shirts and tops are still interested in being kept and worn and fit and are comfortable. We keep those, we find a place to put those back, and then we can donate the rest and pass those on to somebody else who will enjoy them. So then as we've whittled down each of our piles, we see how much there is to store, and we can figure out how to appropriately space that into the closet so that it fits and you can see what you have and use it. Sometimes weeding out the things you don't want anymore is all that you need, and you have enough space to keep what you want already. Other times there certainly will be products that are going to really be beneficial, maybe a bin or a basket of some kind to store out of the season things that you want to put really high up on a shelf, or slide under a bed, something like that. So sometimes there are products that will be really helpful, and there's a wide array of where you can find those things, certainly anywhere online. And there are sort of low-cost stores like Target, Walmart, and Kmart where you can find great products. And there's also some higher-end stores like Crate and Barrel or the Container Store where you can find some pieces that are a little more expensive, but also a little more high quality and probably a little bit more aesthetically appealing. You know, they have different bamboo or metal or things like that.
What about people who just have a hard time parting with their clothes? You know, I like them all. I don't want to get rid of anything.
Yeah, well, that can be a challenge. And the important thing to ask yourself is, do you actually wear that item? A lot of people have clothes that they like, but they can't remember the last time they wore it. So I think a good rule of thumb is if you haven't worn it in the past year, chances are you're not going to wear it in the next year. The one exception to that, or I should say the two exceptions to that, are if you've had a drastic change in body size. For example, if you had a pregnancy, then, you know, maybe in the past year there was a good reason you didn't wear those clothes, or if it's formal wear. So maybe you have a black tie event that you go to, and for whatever reason you didn't make it this past year. So those are the two exceptions I allow. But be realistic with your body size and shape, and what feels good on your body, what you're comfortable in, what you feel you look good in and you're confident wearing, as well as be realistic as to what size you will continue to be. So a lot of people keep clothes because they think they will get smaller, and that may or may not happen. And a lot of people also will keep clothes that are too big because they're worried about gaining weight back. And sometimes that's sort of a fail-safe, that you can gain the weight back because you've got those clothes and no one will know. So I usually suggest, if you've lost some weight and you want to keep that weight off, to get rid of the quote-unquote fat clothes, because it's just an excuse to wear them again. And you don't need that reminder anymore. You've lost the weight and you're feeling good.
I can see where people, I myself have like 3 different sizes of things in my closet. My skinny clothes, my regular clothes, and my fat clothes.
And that's pretty common. And really, if you are realistic about what fits and how far your body will or won't change, then that can really change how much is in your closet.
And I can see the benefit of having someone like you, a professional, come in, a fresh set of eyes. Say, you know, really?
Yeah, and when it comes to clothes, there are 2 good questions to ask. One is, when's the last time I wore it? And if you remember wearing something last winter but haven't worn it yet this winter, I say go ahead and keep it. If you know for sure you didn't wear it last winter and you really haven't worn it yet this winter, chances are you won't. And the other question is, if you're not sure whether or not to keep something, is put it aside in a try-on pile. So once you've weeded out things you know for sure you would like to keep and you know for sure you don't want to keep, you've got that try-on pile left, and you can give yourself a little fashion show one afternoon and see what pieces you really still like and might actually wear that maybe you just forgot about.
For many of us, it seems like our closets are packed, but we're wearing the same things. You know?
Yeah, most people wear 20% of their wardrobe 80% of the time. So that's pretty drastic. That means that 80% of our wardrobe is only 20% being worn. So, and sometimes that is things that, you know, maybe they're more formal, or you have a casual job and you used to have a formal job, something like that. But most of the time, people are wearing only 20% of their wardrobe.
Do you ever get into discussions or heated discussions with your clients about what to keep and what to toss?
Well, I try not to make them heated discussions, but we certainly do talk about it. And there are lots of questions that I ask them so that they can take a realistic look at what they actually use and how often they use it, because maybe there are things that they do use, but it's only once a year. So we can pack it away so it's not taking up space that's front and center. Things like that maybe they just haven't thought about or haven't realized yet. And some people can be very resistant to getting rid of things, and that does make organizing a challenge from time to time. There are certainly people that can have a more organized space without getting rid of things, but usually getting rid of things will really help make that process go more smoothly.
In the course of your career, have you ever come across a hoarder?
Absolutely. I personally work with a few hoarders a year, and there are certainly other organizers that specialize in hoarding. There's another association called the ICD. It's the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. And they provide training and education open to the public as well as to professionals about specific types of clients. So it could be people with learning disorders, things like that, as well as hoarding. So there are some organizers that specialize in hoarding and prefer to only work with that type of client. And there are other organizers like myself that work with a wide array of clients as well as hoarders. And that's a very different ball game than, helping somebody clean out their clothes closet or their kitchen cabinets.
A lot of your things you feel have sentimental value to you, and you just don't want to get rid of them.
Sure.
How do we do that? How do we manage that?
Well, there are a couple of ways to get around that if you find yourself collecting a lot of things for sentimental value. And the first question I ask if somebody says that they want to keep something or need to keep something because it's from somebody that's important to them is I ask that even if it's something they don't really care for, the first thing I ask them is, will you remember that person without this item? Most of the time, the answer is yes. So there are other things to remind them of that person, or they have memories that aren't associated with that item at all. So once they realize that, it might be easier to let that item go. The second thing I ask them is, will that person know if this item is gone? Sometimes the answer is yes, and then we might keep it and put it somewhere out of the way. But most of the time the answer is no. That person won't know. That person probably doesn't even remember giving you the item. So those are some things to think about. Another good thing, and I use this a lot with moms who have a lot of artwork or papers that have come home from school and don't really know what to do with them, especially the pieces that are oversized or have things glued on them and are 3D, is we take pictures of them. And having a photo album, either a physical one or one on a computer, is a lot easier to store than piles of paperwork. Same thing could be applied to knickknacks and items throughout the house. If they're things you don't really like and you want to clear out space, but you would like to remember them, so we can take pictures of them and then donate the item.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, and then you sort of have a little scrapbook type thing.
And Amy, if people wanted to get a hold of you or if they wanted to contact a professional organizer, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. Well, they can visit NAPO Chicago's website, which is napochicago.com. And you can punch in your zip code to find an organizer that's geographically near you, or you can search by specialty if you have a particular project you'd like to work on. And all of the organizers, including myself, have their websites and their contact information listed there. So you can search through and see who's nearby or who's got that specialty that you're looking to work with.
So some of you have, as you said, different specialties. Maybe someone specializes in kitchens or garages, basements, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And there are some organizers that only work corporately. Some work residentially only. So there's really a wide array. You can have organizers that help you with relocations or downsizing a senior citizen, estate sales and garage sales. There's really a wide variety of things that an organizer can help with.
I didn't even think about those things, but yeah, it could be very helpful to have a professional organizer come in if you're downsizing a grandma or an elderly aunt.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
Our guest again has been Amy Traeger. She's president of the Chicago chapter of the National Association of Professional Organizers, NAPO. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And that's our show, Mix Matters, for this Sunday. Thank you for listening. And if you want to get more information on organizing your house and your life, you can follow NAPO Chicago on Facebook and Twitter. Until next week, I'm Susan Winsek, and this is 101.9 The Mix.